Modern life often feels like operating a failing interface. You have too many tabs open, the processor is overheating, and no matter how many times you hit refresh, the errors keep multiplying. Many professionals approach meditation as a tool for stress reduction, a way to lower the heart rate and find 20 minutes of quiet. Attempting to use these techniques for relaxation alone is like rebooting a frozen application without addressing the memory leak that caused the crash. You get a moment of relief, but the system is programmed to freeze again. Human experience, the things we see, hear, and touch, is a superficial user interface. It is a surface-level projection. When this UI generates friction, we seek worldly workarounds. We reach for alcohol, gambling, or mindless entertainment to distract from the system lag. These coping mechanisms function as false exits. They mute the error notifications temporarily while leaving the underlying system bugs unresolved. Treating symptoms at the surface ensures eventual system failure. Solving the problem requires looking directly at the underlying architecture. Beneath that distracting user interface, a back-end code executes every action and reaction in your life. This is karma. It is a strict algorithm of cause and effect, the core operating system governing reality. This logic executes relentlessly. Whether on Earth or in deep space, the algorithm processes inputs and generates the corresponding outputs without exception. The operating system runs the code regardless of your awareness or belief in the process. Generations of practitioners have spent lifetimes mapping this backend, compiling their observations into a vast library of technical records. These records establish that an advanced practitioner can bypass the surface UI, access the terminal, and read the backend logs directly. Ending the loop of human frustration requires accepting that the system is governed by a strict, debuggable code. Reaching the backend requires a specific diagnostic protocol. You cannot think your way into the system because the thinking mind is itself a surface application. Entry into the system terminal requires dropping all physical and sensory processing overhead to absolute zero. This access requires a hardware interface, known as the seventh base, located 2 fingers above the navel. To engage it, the user brings the mind to a complete halt at this coordinate. All sensory data vectors terminate at this boundary. This state of absolute stillness provides a high-resolution window into the terminal. It is a moment of intense, alert system access. Master practitioners empirically mapped this coordinate through centuries of systematic testing on the human architecture. Without routing through the seventh base, the mind remains isolated, watching a screen it cannot control. Achieving zero processing overhead at the seventh base allows the mind to penetrate the deeper levels of its own architecture. Consciousness is a nested tech stack. The mind comprises concentric, increasingly refined inner bodies. Drilling inward reveals the refined human layer and celestial bodies, each with lower processing noise. At the deepest layer sits the pure source code, the Dhammakaya, the uncorrupted base layer. Accessing this stack trace is a methodical process of inward observation, following the steps outlined in the technical records. Massive architectural infrastructure exists solely to facilitate and scale the teaching of this nested stack trace protocol. Most users live their entire lives within the outermost, glitchiest layer of software, never seeing the processing power sitting at the core of the stack. Root access allows for an active diagnostic phase. You have the permissions required to see the specific errors crashing your system. This diagnostic reveals a hidden program corrupting the system's logic, a force of ignorance called Mara. Mara functions as malware, using mental defilements like greed and anger as code injections to hijack system behavior. This malware intercepts your inputs, warping the data before a decision is reached. It forces the system to deviate from its optimal state of clarity. The corrupted outputs are visible absolutely everywhere. An injection of stinginess produces an output of poverty. An injection of anger generates repeating cycles of misery. This malware is designed for stealth. It remains invisible to anyone operating purely on the surface UI level. Meditation functions as a cybersecurity protocol, isolating this malware before it executes and compromises the user's lifecycle. The physical hardware eventually reaches the end of its lifecycle. At that point, the system undergoes a mandatory data migration. This migration follows a binary algorithm, determined by the system log's clarity at transfer. A system weighed down by malware is a cloudy mind, routed to a lower-tier server. A debugged system is a clear mind, routed to an upgraded server. This migration is automated. There is no negotiation at the moment the hardware fails. Daily diagnostic protocols ensure that when the hardware reaches its limit, the system is ready for a clean data transfer. Looking at the macro perspective of this mind science shifts the priorities of the user. Years of optimizing worldly habits only allow a person to run glitchy applications slightly faster. The true objective is an upgrade of the operating system itself. This requires achieving absolute stillness at the seventh base, isolating the malware, and tracing the architecture to the source. Individual users performing this diagnostic contribute to a collective effort to secure and refine the human system. Moving from system blindness to root access is an empirical path available to anyone who executes the protocol. Mastering the source code allows a user to rewrite their reality from the inside out.